Hey guys, so much interesting video on Wild Rift. So I'm back with a Lucian supplementary guide, and I'm gonna get this video out to you guys as quickly as possible because obviously this build involves building Manamune as your first item, and as we all know, Manamune is getting an update at the end of the month, most likely gonna be more similar to PC's version of Manamune and Essence Reaver as well, amongst other items. But anyways, because this build is probably only going to be relevant for the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to, of course, go over this one and try to release this video as quickly as we can. This is actually a really old Lucian build, which I have actually covered before, going for Manamune into Black Cleaver into Blade of the Rune King, but the new additions to the build are Steric's Gauge as well as the Amaranth Twin Guard. Now, the build in concept is pretty simple. You go for Manamune. Manamune gives you the mana ability haste as well as the on-hit damage from your spells as well as your basic attacks when you evolve it into Mirror Mana, of course. And that's basically it. So I'm gonna explain how this is good later on. So next up, you go for Black Cleaver, gives you health, AD, ability haste, as well as the Rage passive, which gives you movement speed, as well as the Sunder passive, which kind of shreds armor, and it's really useful because Lucian has that double auto. So for example, you Q auto, that's 3 stacks of Sunder stacked already, and then you W auto, it's max stacks. But of course, you can only apply this onto one person when you auto attack. So, but of course, if whoever that person is, armor is gonna get shredded. Next up, we go for Bork. Gives you AD attack speed, physical vamp, as well as, of course, the on-hit % health damage. And finally, of course, when you attack 3 times, you will deal magic damage as well as steal their movement speed with a 1-minute cooldown. So, what do these 3 items do in conjunction? Well, firstly, the first 2 items give you a ton of ability haste. So this gives you 40 ability haste, makes your dash cooldown come up a lot more often, makes it a lot more safe for you, and as well as, of course, just lower ability cooldowns allows you to, of course, just output more damage with both your passive as well as your abilities themselves. So next up, of course, this one kind of fixes your mana issues, which Lucian doesn't have serious mana issues, but he does run out of mana if you stay in lane for too long. Black Cleaver gives you the injection of AD as well as the health. So 350 extra max health is a lot, especially for an ADC. And of course, that's going to help you out a lot. So with the Blade of the Rune King, this helps you with your tank shredding as well. And of course, gives you that physical vamp to stay in fights longer and of course sustain through fights. And then we of course have Seralda's Grudge, which of course gives you the armor penetration, more AD ability haste, as well as of course the Icy passive, which is amazing on Lucian because his ult can't apply Seralda's Grudge, and whoever you ult basically cannot escape. And finally, you go for a pure defensive item like Steric's Gauge, which of course gives you 400 max health, as well as Lifeline, which of course gives you 35%, not 35%, 75% bonus HP shield when you reach below 35% health, as well as Tenacity and Size. And of course, you get max health from here, so this is going to be even better. Alternatively, you can go for Amaranth Twin Guard, which of course gives you 55 of each defense, as well as of course extra 30% of each when you are in combat for like 6 seconds. So you can mess around with the order a bit. For example, you can go for like Seralda's later, or you can even not go for Seralda's at all. Or one of the builds that I tried involved not going for Blade of the Rune King and instead going for Seralda's. So aside from like the first 2 items, you can kind of mix and match the last couple of items, but I found that this kind of works the best. Now, I initially thought Seralda's wouldn't really be very necessary because you already have armor shred from Black Cleaver, and you also have the on-hit max health damage on Bork. So against tanks, you're not going to have too big of an issue. But now the issue becomes against squishies, because against squishies with this, you know, and like this, you don't really do that much damage. So the Bork also kind of helps you with the attack speed and with a little bit of attack damage against the squishies as well. But overall, basically, it just feels way better to go for this kind of build with the Bork in than without the Bork. So of course, Steric's Gauge also gives you the extra 50% of your base AD as bonus AD. And yeah, so I don't really think Twin Guard is necessary on Lucian. I think Steric's Gauge works way better. But of course, in the future, you will have the Immoral Shield Bow item, so you might go for that instead. So as I said, this build's only going to be relevant for the next couple of weeks or so. But yeah, So as usual on Lucian, we go for the Kraken Slayer, because Lucian's double autos proc Kraken Slayer really easily. We of course go for Hunter Vampirism for the lifesteal, Bone Plating because it blocks the first incoming attack now and it's super duper strong in lane as well as later on versus assassins. And I like to top it off with a Hunter Genius for even more ability haste, because you can get up to 18 ability haste total with Hunter Genius, which is almost equivalent to other like full-on ability haste items. This build kind of relies a lot on ability haste and spamming your abilities a lot to make up for the lack of crit damage in your build. And of course, with this build, you sort of will deal a little bit less damage than the crit build, but you will be a lot more durable and do more damage against tanks, especially because of the Black Cleaver, the Blade of the Rune King, as well as the Sorela's Grudge. And for the spells, of course, we go for Exhaust and we go for Flash, pretty standard stuff. And with all that out the way, let's talk about the gameplay. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to talking about the gameplay itself. So of course, I would say that there isn't exactly a particular time that this build is extremely good or whatnot. Of course, if the enemy team is like super duper tanky, this build could have more value. Like for example, in this game we have a Darius and a Leona, so there could be like more value if the enemy team is sort of tankier, but overall, I would say whether the enemy team is squishy or tanky, this build is still fine. Of course, it does work better against like a tanky team. So just like how if you're against a squishier team, the crit build will probably be better because you can just do more damage in general towards squishy enemies. But both builds on Lucian do work quite well. Of course, when we reach the patch 4.2 update, Lucian, like every other ADC build, is gonna likely change, and we're gonna have to see exactly how it changes and update the build accordingly. So here we're up against a Tristana and a Leona in lane. Now this is of course a very strong all-in lane, so all I'm trying to do is, the way you really kind of fight against an all-in lane is to try to make sure they cannot all-in you by taking away their health. So here, Leona's below half HP, and if she goes in, she's going to put herself at risk of dying. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to chunk them out. Like me and Senna both have pretty long range with our respective Qs, which is able to hit onto the enemies and poke them out. And in this case, this has forced Leona to go back and take the fruit already. Here, Leona goes in. I'm surprised she actually walked forward, which is why I dashed the other way, because I thought she was going to dash back. Either way, beautiful route by the Senna. Me and Tristana trade Flash for Flash. And the level up actually kind of saves me there. I think without the level up and an auto from Leona, I think I probably would have died there. But thankfully, level up does save me. Now overall, enemy bot lane, burns all their sums. So do I, but Senna still has both. So overall, it's a positive trade in our direction. So Tristana here is backing, and Leona is by herself to defend the wave. Here, as you guys can see, what I'm trying to mention, this is how you poke them out. And here, with the minion wave shoved in, here me and Senna can recall to restore our resources as well as pick up some more items. So here I picked up the tier, of course. With the Mana Moon first item, you generally want to get Longsword at level 1 and then you back for a tier. Reason why you go Longsword first is because without the extra 12 AD, you will be a lot weaker in lane and a lot weaker in trade. So you don't want to miss out on that. You want to go for Longsword first. Only at your first back, then you can go for the tier and start stacking it up. Really, it's not so important to get like Sapphire Crystal first item to start stacking. You only do that if like you're a mid lane mage, like for example Orianna, who doesn't really care about getting Tome first item anyway. So, but whereas on ADCs, it's really important to have that longsword start in order to be able to sort of contest the lane and do decent damage. Now here, Tristana and Fizz and everyone has just basically just collapsed onto the Lux, and I did see that happening. I was planning to like rotate, but the collapse was so quick, you know, no time for me to respond. So not much we can do aside from simply just go back to the wave. Now we can see that Fizz is actually on the buff and Tristana is still in the area. So here, this time I'm going faster on the rotation, and my Pantheon manages to flash away. I'm able to finish off the Tristana, and here I'm trying to ult the Fizz, who is in the Fog of War. I do manage to actually hit onto him, and that actually gives me the vision to continue to blast him, but unfortunately he is at an angle that I cannot quite finish him off. Lux tries to do the same, but again he escapes. Fizz is a very slippery character, as we all know, so not too much comes out of that. So here with Tristana dead and Leona looks like she has backed, I'm able to pick up one plate. Leona comes in with the Zenith Blade as well as the Solar Flare, but not too much happens. Leona overstepped by a lot because Tristana can't hit, and we are able to chunk them out once again. Beautiful route by Senna once again forces the flash from the Tristana as well, from the Leona, as well as the ult from Tristana. However, I flash forward to finish off the kill, but I end up getting stunned on the tower, so it's kind of a huge misplay by me there. Could have been a kill or even maybe a double kill, but instead it ended up me flashing and getting stunned on the tower and dying. These sort of things, of course, do happen from time to time, but yeah, sort of just a mess up there. But anyways, you know, we're back in the game, back out of respawn, and now we're 1-1-1. This kind of build, you're not very strong in the early game. This is one of the reasons why I don't quite like this build. Like, I do think this build is good, has its merits, but I don't think it's really suited to the way I like to play Lucian, which is more aggressive in the early game. Because I feel that getting Mana Immune as your first item, the item is the kind that you need to stack. So it's not really an early game item, it's more of a mid to late game item. And this means that you cannot really play so aggressive in the early game because, of course, you don't have the damage because you don't have your Essence Reaver or your like Storm Razor or whatever other item it may be. So anyways, here Dragon has spawned. I'm just going to quickly clear out the wave, get hit by the Leona ulti, but again, Tristana's not in range to hit. Here I'm kind of like chunking out the Leona a lot. I managed to finish her off with my ultimate. Tristana ult actually ends up saving me. If she autoed me once and then ulted, I actually would have died, but she manages to mess that up. Here the whole enemy team is coming into the collapse on Senna. I'm able to actually finish both the Tristana as well as eventually the Yasuo of them coming in 3v2. So overall, it's pretty positive. We end up trading 1 for 2 in that small trade, and overall, at the end of the day, it actually was 1 for 3 because we also killed the Leona prior to that. So that's a really good sequence and chain of events that occurred. In the meanwhile, our team has actually managed to secure the Rift Herald and is launching the Rift Herald down mid lane. That's alright. Dragon's not really being contested here. A huge fight breaks out, 5v5 pretty much in mid lane. Unfortunately, Pantheon dies, and Senna pretty much walks straight into the enemy team and gets caught out, coming from the wrong direction there. She should have gone the long way through the red buff area. However, as soon as I say that, Leona sort of more or less does the same, where she eased into my team pretty much by herself for no good reason. Fear Fizz comes in, is able to escape with his Q through to the other side, and pretty much it becomes a very long extended sequence of events. As you guys can see, Yasuo hits the tornado onto the Lux and I dash away. Here Pantheon manages to catch up Tristana, but Tristana flashes away, and again the chain of events is still continuing with Darius trying to get the skull, and here I'm trying to stop him from getting the skull, so I Q through the skull onto him, but he does hit his Q on me as well. Here Tristana puts her bomb onto me and ults me away. She lives on 1 HP, and I nearly died to the bomb as well, because if I stuck around, she would have gotten like 2 more stacks on me, and I probably would have died as well. So in the end, pretty much no one dies here. Here, the sequence of events extends even further with a contest on the blue buff. Yasuo ends up dying for it, and I end up going to pick up the minion wave while my team goes for the Darius, who's recalling. Fizz comes on in for the trade onto the Senna, and Jace is now chasing the Fizz, and Jace picks up the double kill. And yeah, that was a super duper long sequence of events that pretty much was non-stop action, but finally I'm able to recall, and in the meanwhile Jace is pushing down with Pantheon, and the Yasuo and Tristana are responding. On the other side of the map, we have Leona, who has a Hull Breaker for some reason. Just look at her arm. She has Hull Breaker for some reason, and she's trying to solo push this lane. So it's complete shenanigans in this match. But in that whole like long series of events, I'm able to come out with a scoreline of 4-1-4, and we're doing pretty good, pretty alright. I would say. Still have not yet evolved the Mana Immune into the Mirror Mana, and here we're kind of just harassing the Leona. But again, Leona is a tank, and she has Hull Breaker, which is going to make her even more tanky because she's alone. So we barely do any damage to her. For me and Senna even together to kill her, we probably need to run her down the entire lane. So with her so close to the tower, it's unlikely we're able to do anything. Darius and Fizz, we can see they're coming up. So here, I'm pinging to retreat. I'm running all the way back because I know they're going to run through that tri-bush and they're going to go for us. Here, Fizz hits the ulti, but here me and Jace are actually ready to respond. And here, Pantheon comes in with the ulti as well. So it ends up pretty much being a big bait. And here, I'm going to flash after the Darius, hit the exhaust. I'm going to dash in towards him to avoid getting hit by his Q to prevent him from getting the lifesteal. Leona and Yasuo find themselves on the wrong side of the map. I pick up the triple onto the Leona and we also end up killing the Yasuo. So overall, despite the play looking really bad for us at the start with the whole enemy team collapsing onto us, we are basically able to bait them into a situation where they're fighting in between two towers and we're able to come out on top with 4 kills out of that situation. So now I'm 7-1-6, suddenly in an absolutely amazing spot, completed my Zanya's Hourglass as well as my defensive boots. And now we're gonna start to build towards the Blade of the Rune King. Of course, again, the Mana Mune still yet to be evolved into the Mirror Mana, but it's gonna be really soon. At this point in the game, we're kind of nearly there. So when we get that, it's sort of like a huge power spike for us, of course. And here we're just farming up the Raptors. Here, we see Yasuo kind of chasing Jace in. I'm just here to kind of back up the Jace. Yasuo does hit the tornado onto the center. Of course, he doesn't go in because that would not really make too much sense. Pantheon out straight into the Herald pit, and we end up fighting pretty much over the Herald. Here, I'm dashing in as well to help him out. I tried to finish off the Darius, but Darius ends up getting his ulti, which pretty much ends up spelling trouble. Here, I managed to dash across the wall from the Yasuo and live with 1 HP. So now, kind of the fight continues on without me. Jace picking up the kill onto the Fizz, and then Leona coming in as well as Tristana chasing onto the Senna. Of course, I have no choice but to back because I'm a tickle away from pretty much just dying. And Senna ends up going down, as well as the Lux, of course. So the enemy team ends up winning this fight. And it's a super duper hectic game. I'm having a lot of trouble just pretty much calling the action and also talking about what we are doing as the Lucian itself. But here we're just going to obviously defend the Herald. And the enemy team is still kind of trying to push in. Now here, what we're doing is Pantheon goes in to catch out the recalls. I managed to Q through the Leona to secure the kill onto Tristana, and Pantheon finishes off the Leona himself. So this pretty much tells you that you should not be having a greedy recall and recalling like right there. You should be walking back and recalling, not like in such a dangerous position where the enemy team could obviously catch you out like what we just did there. So enemy team kind of had a really good fight and then ended up with a really huge throw. Sort of how, of course, solo queue rank games go. Now here the next dragon is up and there's gonna of course be a contest for it. Now Senna and Jace are backing off while the rest of us are coming over to back them up. Fizz tries to hide in the bush for an assassination, but the bush is warded. Here we got the control ward into the dragon pit, so enemy team can't really see into the pit. And here Darius tries to come in from the side. Fizz is on the other side, and kind of 2 fights break out simultaneously. Fizz ends up dying to the Jace overall, and here are getting chased down by the Leona with the Hullbreaker. As you guys can see, super duper tanky, but can't really tank us 3v1. Honestly, here Yasuo and Tristana are the only 2 left on the enemy team, and I felt that 3 of us could definitely take on the 3 of them if it came down to it, but both sides end up just backing off and not going for anything crazy. So in the meanwhile, while all this is happening, you can see that in the bottom lane, our minions are pushing and they have taken the tier 2 tower off of the slow push. And I'm really close to getting my Blade of the Rune King. Also didn't really mention, but we did also get our evolution on our Mana Mune into the Mirror Mana already. So here, after we get Blade of the Rune King, 3 item power spread, we're going to be really strong. 9-1-9 at the current moment with 11k gold. My team is doing pretty well in general as well. Jace, of course, at 12k and Pantheon also at 11k gold. On the enemy team is pretty much only Yasuo with that sort of wealth on the enemy team. So he's the main one we want to look out for. Of course, pretty much everyone in the enemy team is a threat at this point. Yasuo is fed to a certain extent. Fizz can assassinate us really easily. And of course, we don't want to tangle with the tanks either, because that will allow Tristana to free fire. So here, Leona gets caught out again. Darius tries to zoom in to help her out with his ghost, but ends up zooming into his death and making us legendary. Now here we can see Fizz and Yasuo are trying to push in the bottom lane. So here we call their buff because we obviously are 4 people, we push faster than 2 people, and we're pushing onto an inhibitor, whereas they're pushing onto tier 2. Now obviously they have recalled, but to no avail, because pretty much by the point we saw them there, they're already lost inhibitor. So actually turns out they should have simply just gone for that tier 2 tower. Now here Pantheon sets up a trap. I get hit with the Fizz ult, but due to the stasis, I survive, no big deal. Fizz goes down because he did get hit by the Lux binding. Here I try to dash forward to, you know, get a little bit more, but nothing ends up really happening. 2-man stun from the Leona ulti, but no real fallout once again. Now here we could have pulled out the same trap again, actually, and it's gonna be Yasuo caught in the trap again, but we end up not really doing that. Darius goes forward with the flash apprehend, and another full-on fight ends up breaking out. Here I'm just launching the culling into the Darius and the Leona, and then we just auto attack down the Yasuo, and we end up pretty much killing the entire enemy team at this point. And here we're trying to end the game. Now here, it was a lot of shenanigans here. So basically here, we could have ended the game, but let's see what happens here. Pantheon ults away in fear of the Fizz, executes himself, maybe because he thinks the game is over. Fizz ends up going for this Jace, who obviously is below half HP, kills him. But here I could have actually ended the game with the Senna, but I have red buff burning on the Fizz, so whenever I go into range to try to end the game, the tower is focusing me, which puts me in a position where I can be killed by Fizz, and now I have to flash away. Senna ends up tanking some of the Fizz spells, and Senna now has to run as well. So now we have a situation where me and Senna are on the run from Darius, and look at the health of the base. If I didn't auto-attack the Fizz there and didn't apply the red buff onto him, I could have actually ended the game there. And if I ended up losing this game, which I did not, that would have been a game-losing mistake of not being able to end the game because I applied red buff onto Fizz, which caused the Nexus to focus me instead of the minions. But yeah, so I kind of didn't really realize what was the issue when I was playing the game. I was wondering why the Nexus was focusing me, and then I realized that, oh, it's because I had red buff on Fizz. So red buff sometimes can really be you know, more of a disadvantage than an advantage. Of course, those are rare instances, mostly to do with towers, because red buff forces you to take aggro. But either way, you know, we're still in a really good spot. We're at 14k gold, 11, 1, and 14 with 4 items completed already at this point. And here, honestly, my team is like pretty good amount ahead of the enemy team. So here, another full-on fight breaks out. Enemy team is like five of them versus like 3 of us. Lux is rotating and she does get there. Here I get hit by a lot of CC, but I am able to stasis and survive eventually. Pantheon in the meanwhile is simply just pushing, so all we have to do is to keep them fighting us, and even if we die, Pantheon's still gonna win us the game. Darius realizes the situation and he has actually back to defend against the Pantheon, but the rest of his team ends up dying to all of us already, so pretty much at this point the game is won. Darius cannot defend his base against all 4 of us. Of course, Jace did die in that exchange, and here we end up coming in to finish off the base. So you guys can see how good this so-called tanky Lucian build is, and I'll leave you guys with the stats as usual. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.